All right, this is our 8th lesson in chapter 1. This lesson is about slope. And when I hear the word slope, I think about a ski slope. And I think about a mountain, a skier skiing down the mountain. And what makes a good ski slope is that it's very steep. And you can see my slope here is pretty steep. So the definition of slope is the steepness of a line. Our notes for 1.8, the slope formula is delta y over delta x. That should look really, really familiar to you from rate of change. So it's the same formula. Really what we're doing is we're finding the rate of change of a line. Slope can be thought of as rise over run. And that really comes in terms of graphing because the change in y is the vertical change. Think about your y-axis is the vertical line. And your change in x is the horizontal change because your x-axis is the horizontal line. So rising would be going up, running would be going to the right. So rise over run is how we think of slope. One more note, this is not in your note packet, but I would write it down if I were you. A slope that has a constant rate of change, so a slope that is constant when we find that rate of change will produce a linear graph. So these are when we're talking about straight lines, and we'll be focused on those today. Here's our practice problem. You're going to graph the data about plant height for a science fair project. We're going to use this table right here. And then we are going to use two separate methods to find the slope. Two separate methods. So the first thing we want to do is we want to graph this. Our weeks are going to go down here. This will be week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. Go ahead and make sure you're following along in your notes. The plant height we'll put on the y-axis. And we can go 1, skip 2 spaces, 2, skip 2 spaces, 3, skip 2 spaces, 4, skip 2 spaces, 5, skip 2, 6, skip 2, 7, and that should be enough for us. So if we want to plot these points, we're going to go to 1, 1.5. So 1, 1.5. 2, 3, 3, 4.5, 4, 6. And we can see that we have a really nice straight line forming there. I'm going to use my line tool to draw that straight line just so it's really nice and straight. And so we can see that this has created a linear graph. So if we want to find the slope, we're going to use our slope formula, delta y over delta x. And that's how our y's are changing as our x's are changing. And we can do that here on the graph. That's pretty easy to do. Or we can do it in the table. So our first point is 1, 1 5/10. Our second point is 2, 3. Our third point is 3, 4 5/10. And our fourth point is 4, 6. So if we want to find the change in y over the change in x, we can do it from the graph first by focusing on our y values. So if we look here, we can see that our y's are going up plus 1 5/10. Same thing happens here, plus 1 5/10. And again, plus 1 5/10. Those will be our delta y's. If we look at the x's, 1 to 2, our x's are going up by 1. 2 to 3, x's are going up by 1. 3 to 4, x's are going up by 1. So our slope is delta y, that's my green numbers. Our slope is delta y, 1 5/10. So we're rising 1.5 to run 1. And that's how our graph That's how we can find slope from a graph. Now we can simplify this and we can write it just as a simplified fraction without the 1 in the denominator. If we choose to do this by the chart, some people like to do that better. We do the exact same thing. We focus on our y's first. So our y's go up each time by 1 5/10. Same thing here, 1 5/10. Same thing here, plus 1 5/10. Our x's, they're going up by 1 each time, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, and we would end up with the same delta y over delta x. We're rising 1.5 to run 1. So our explanation, this is when we use rate of change language. So we are going to talk about what the denominator represents, what the numerator represents. Remember, the denominator are your x's, so those are the weeks. And the numerator are your y's, so that's your plant height. Let's say this is in inches. So when we are ready to write our explanation, we use rate of change language. And I'm going to type mine because it's faster for me. So we will say, for every 1 week, the plant grows 1 5/10 inches. That's how we talk about slope. Same way as rate of change, because this is a constant rate of change. It's just a constant rate of change for a line. Okay, so you choose if you like to do it better on the graph using your points and your coordinates written out, or if you choose to do it in the table. Either way is a good method. Remember, it's delta y over delta x, how our y's are changing over how our x's are changing. We have one more problem that we're going to just get started for you. This is number 1 in your note packet. So again, we're still in the notes. It says Jessica has a balance of $45 in her savings account. She deposits $15 per week over the next 4 weeks. Graph the account balance over time. So our weeks will be our x's. So when you start graphing, make sure your weeks are along the x-axis. Our account balance, our money, will be the y's. So make sure you understand that. Then I drew this table out for you. You may want to copy it into your notes. Just going to help you get started here. Week 0 is how it says she starts out with a balance of $45. So in week 0, she has $45. Now in week 1, she adds $15. In week 2, she adds another 15, another 15, another 15. Okay, so I want you to try this problem out. Make sure that you graph it. You find the slope, and then you use that rate of change language to give a little explanation about what slope represents. Last slide here. This is what you have to do to finish up your lesson. Finish your practice problems for 1.8. Update your flashcards. We only have one new word today, that is slope. Please make sure you put on all the important things about slope, like it's the steepness of the line. You should put on rise over run, and you should definitely put delta y over delta x on that slope flashcard. Okay, delta y over delta x, super, super important here. And when you are ready, you can take your chapter 1 quiz 3. There's also an enrichment lesson on direct variation, that is 1.9, and then you can pick up your study guide from me. That's all.